So it's April the 3rd and I like to do a harvest video every month just to give people an impression of the sorts of things that you can grow every month of the year. And I do like April as a growing month. Everything is so kind of just crisp and lush, and of course it's kind of really the start of what people normally call the hungry gap, which runs April, May and early June. And it's a traditional time when harvests are pretty scarce, and as a result we put a bit of effort in to make sure that we've got plenty of food, and I'll show you that as I'm going around. And harvesting, you know, there are a few tricks of the trade, I guess, to harvesting, especially on a small scale like we do it. And so I've got a little ebook which got all the details in one of the chapters, all about the way that we harvest anyway. And I'll put a link to that in the description of the video if you want to take a look. April's always a time when sort of nature can play tricks on you as well. You can think that you've got a huge abundance of food ready to harvest, and then all of a sudden, you know, within weeks really, the whole lot can just run to seed. And although some of the seeding plants are really gorgeous to eat, they do kind of change their nature. So a kale will go from masses of leaf growth to seed heads, and it really stops putting much effort into leaf growth, for example. And carrots are another great example, where you think, oh, I've got all these lovely carrots, and then they all go to seed and got this horrible woody stem in them that makes them really inedible. Same with beetroot and things like that. So anyway, let's take a look round. So I harvest into these 20 litre, I think this is probably 15 litre containers. At this time of year I have to bring water from home, so they've all got water in them. And this is actually the first day that I've brought water, because normally in early spring and winter it's cold enough to just be able to harvest loose into the containers. But if you want really good quality, and harvest takes a long time, it takes me about 2 hours, then it's quite useful to just be able to keep the things wet. And yeah, we really notice the difference in the freshness. So little things we harvest into these 2 litre containers, things like herbs, and as I say, all the other stuff goes into these biggies. So I really like to harvest in sequence, and I start with the root veggies, and in this case I've got potatoes, and these are potatoes that I sowed in July. I have stacks of these little flower pots, and I just fill them up, and I put them like this, kind of in every little spare gap on the plot. And we generally start harvesting these about November time, and we've had them every week since November, and they're pretty lovely actually. I always find it kind of quite amazing that these stay in such good condition, you know, all the way through, just in the compost. And it's kind of a race with potatoes to make sure that we have a nice kind of continuity of supply, because we always are starting to, well, these are the last 2 containers that I'm doing today, and fortunately the next batch are ready. I'll show you those in a minute. I'm not going to harvest them now, I'm going to harvest those next week. I'll probably do a video to show you those. But unfortunately we've run out of baking potatoes right now, and so I'm always looking at techniques for doing keeping baking potatoes for longer. I mean, partly we run out because we just really eat a lot of them, and partly because we just find it difficult to store them in really good quality beyond sort of the middle of March, when the weather starts to warm up, and our storeroom is not in a root cellar or anything like that. So that's the first tub. So those look pretty nice, don't they? I've got one more tub to do today. I just love it when you break them open like this. They're just fantastic. So that's a really nice little harvest of potatoes. So that's why I don't really bother with growing really early potatoes. I find that growing late potatoes and storing them is the best option. So now I'm onto the carrots, And we don't have any carrots in the ground now because we always need the space for something else, and so our carrot bed is now full of onions, and as a result we are onto our containers. And you know, container growing is quite good fun. Quite like it. Traditionally we really have reserved containers for this late crop, but we are going to try and grow more of our summer crop in containers. We'll see how that goes. We've got plenty on the go. Now these carrots won't last very long before these start to run to seed. I've obviously taken the tops off these just to kind of stall the growth. And we've got 3 weeks supply in containers, and by then the ones that we sowed in October in containers that are in the polytunnel at the moment, they will be ready. So here's the next crop, potatoes, and as you can see the first few tubs of these, because I do them in succession, these are starting to fail now, die back, and so these are the ones we'll be harvesting, and then we'll switch on to these, over to these, and it's basically a succession all the way. And then these are the carrots, and we'll start picking these nice and small because we've got loads of them. We've got 5 of these tubs, and these should be ready towards the end of April, so about 3 weeks time. So next up I'm going to do this purple sprouting broccoli. I'm not really sure whether these Coke cans are keeping the pigeons off, but so far we're not really having much of a problem. And we've got quite a bit of purple sprouting broccoli, but nowhere near as much as we normally have because we kind of had a change of plan, and as a result we just didn't have enough planted. But yeah, it's gorgeous stuff. And when you're doing things like this, it's all about successional planning, because you know this purple sprouting broccoli isn't going to last for very long, and as a result we're going to need some alternative to it. We always pick plenty of greens as well. We really like purple sprouting broccoli leaves. And so as the PSB finishes, we'll be switching over to the calabrese, and we've got plenty of that coming on. And we won't need this bed for a while, so we'll leave these to side shoot as well. And then next I'm going to start taking seed heads off the kales, and I've got loads and loads of these. We've also got lots of cabbage as well, seed heads, and they're really gorgeous. So I'm going to be filling a few of these containers, and we've also got a lot of seed heads from the turnips, so we left a few turnips in just so that we could harvest these. I'm not so keen myself on the turnip leaves, but they are quite spinach-like. I'm not a massive fan of cooked spinach, but if you like cooked spinach, turnip greens are excellent. So I should think we'll have another 3 of these. Just noticed the first asparagus starting to come up, so I should think we'll be harvesting that next week. Now we only have a few weeks worth of main crop onions left in the store now, and so kind of the race is on to get plenty of onions. So these are spring onions, so we'll start substituting perhaps a few spring onions into stir fries and things like that, soups and whatever. But most of these spring onions are just for eating fresh, of course, and so I'm going to get harvesting these. But we've got masses of overwintered bulbing onions as well, and that's just one of the example beds. I think we've got 4 beds of these, and they start bulbing up in middle of April, so we'll start harvesting those sort of May and June. starting with small onions and eventually getting, you know, decent sized ones in June. So I tend to harvest my onions with an asparagus knife. I just slip them under there, just work its way through the roots from both sides, and they come out like this, really nice and clean. Leave all the roots in the ground and don't disrupt the plants around them. So I've taken, I don't know, maybe a third of the onions out of here. I've got so many spring onions. Debbie and I tend to eat about 3 spring onions each a day, so we do get through quite a lot every day of the year. So now I'm on to radish, and we don't have a radish bed, we just interplant our radish into basically any gaps that open up. And ideally I just like to harvest whole bunches, but you know, this time of the year when you're doing your early harvests, it's sometimes difficult to get all the radishes to come to maturity at exactly the same time. So I will kind of just take the extra trouble just to tease out the bigger ones and leave the smaller ones. But it is a bit of a fiddle, so I don't really like doing this, and that's why I tend to sow in bunches of 3, because then it's just so much quicker. And a few of them are a bit big, but the big ones apparently are great roasted. I tend to eat mine fresh. So the ones you've just seen, they were interplanted into baby kales, new season kales. These are interplanted into the spinach bed, and these are little beauties. So I'm really pleased with those. Now you can leave the leaves on, of course, and you can eat those leaves as well. They're okay in salads, they're pretty good in smoothies. But right now we don't need these leaves. We have such an abundance of salads and other leafy greens, so we're going to compost those, and they do store better when you remove the leaves, so that's the way we do it. So there we go, we'll just put a lid on those to seal them until packing time. So I noticed that my parsley at home has just germinated, so that's my next crop coming on nicely. But this polytunnel parsley is absolutely fabulous at this time of year, well actually all the way through winter, and we're picking a lot of this because we're finding it's really popular with people, and of course it goes well with so many of the other spring harvests. And no matter how much I seem to pick of it, it seems to have grown back the week later, and that's kind of what you expect in spring. Actually, we tend to just pick anything that's ready and just expect that nature will take care of replenishing it by the time a week's gone by. So there's some gorgeous parsley. So now we're on to the brassica greens, and I like to pick pretty much anything that's available really at this time of year. I really, as I said, like the purple sprouting broccoli ones, and of course, you know, these purple sprouting broccoli, they don't need all this leaf now, so we'll probably take, you know, a leaf off each plant. You want the smaller ones, you know, they're really nice quality. And of course, green curly kale is absolutely fantastic at this time of year. All this new tender growth, just the last kind of flush before it all goes to seed. So I'm going to be picking masses of that. And I'll do some Carvalho Nero. Most of my Carvalho Nero is actually back at home, so I can't show you very much of it, but what we've got here is still really lovely. And I've got some of this incredibly frilly red Ursa. I've never had this before, but it looks gorgeous. I'm going to have a huge quantity of it because we only put in, I think, 2 plants just to try them. But I think I like it more than the Red Russian. And I've got a little bit of this scarlet, I think it is, which isn't very scarlet at this time of year, but it's certainly got that beautiful ribbon. Now, we are huge fans of Brussels sprout leaves, and I've got these new season plants in the polytunnel, so I'm going to start taking just 1 leaf, probably maybe 2 off each plant. And of course I'm only growing these for the leaves, so it doesn't really matter if I take a lot of leaf off them. But right now I just don't need that much because I've got loads of kales. But soon I won't have as much kale, and by then I'll absolutely love all these sprout leaves. These are absolutely gorgeous, and I've got another big bed of these to start picking from soon. I might pick a few off these actually. There's plenty. And then in a few weeks' time I will start picking these Calabrese leaves. Right now I want to give the plants as much leaf as I can because they're just starting to put on flower growth, so I don't want to overpick the leaves until their flowers are a bit more mature. So next up I'm picking field beans for leaves, and there's generally a lot of confusion about how to pick these. I've been picking these plants now for, well, since December, and you can see that they're tiny little plants, and that's because I'm always just pinching off that growing tip just to get those really high quality new leaves. And then that one will grow on, and that's the one I'll pick next week. And the same here, I'll pick this one, that's the one I'll pick next week. Not to bore you, but I'll pick that one, and I'm generally just choosing the top quality leaves. And that little growing tip there. And this is one of our most popular crops. People have them in salads, anywhere where you'd use spinach in cooking. They're really lovely. And they're lower in oxalic acid than spinach as well, so if you've got an issue with oxalic acid consumption, try field beans. So this is a field bean bed interplanted with spinach. The spinach has been overwintered just like the field beans, and when the spinach goes to seed I'll probably still be picking field beans. So now I'm on to the spinach harvest, and these probably look like tiny little plants to you, but the reason they're so small is because these have been harvested 15 times so far since they were planted. So they were planted in October, maybe actually even late October for these, and we didn't start harvesting them in earnest really until January. But yeah, they've certainly given and given and given. So I generally take generally trying to get it a bit like that. So I've left 1 big leaf and 2 small leaves, and I'll try and work my way through the whole bed in a similar fashion. So I've picked about 10 litres off these 2 beds now. Still plenty of leaf on there, so they're still going to grow really fast and be ready for harvest again next week. So moving on to my next spinach bed. This was the one that had radish planted in it, and this one has got turnips planted in it. Those turnips are just starting to form now, and that's pretty good because these are older beds, so these have been harvested 20 times, and so they'll be going to seed soon. So I've just peeled the net back on half of the pea shoots, and I'm just going to start taking just a few of these now. So if I just take these tender tips like that, and that will just stimulate the peas to start throwing up new shoots. And we normally, all through winter and early spring, we grow these on the windowsill, but they're just so nice to grow in the ground. And Debbie really likes these in stir fries and the like, and also in soups. That lovely taste of fresh peas, because it'll be mid to late May before we actually have peas. So for now, it's all about the pea shoots. So now I'm on to the salad harvest. I'm clearing that bed totally because I'm putting in my early baking potatoes like I have in that bed down there. So I won't show you all the beds, but here's another sample bed that desperately needs picking. And we've got another bed here which we're leaving for hearts. So I'll pick those, leaving those for hearts. It's going to be the same story here, half and half. So there we go. And then those will heart up nicely. And that's the next batch of hearts coming along there. And then the next succession is in the back garden, because all these beds that have got lettuces in are going to be carrots or peppers. And one thing we don't have at the moment are turnips, so it's really nice to see all these turnips forming. And they're kind of, overpowering the lettuces a bit, but it doesn't really matter because turnips are more important to us than more lettuces at the moment. We've got plenty of lettuces and no turnips. So I'm going to pick some cabbage, and I'm focusing obviously on all of the plants that are starting to go to seed, like this one here. And so I'm just taking all these leaves off. And these are gorgeous, these leaves. We actually prefer the loose leaf cabbages. So some of the collect varieties, this sort of green one with the purple ribs, this one is starting to go to seed now. Although the colettes are still in good conditions, I'll take all those colettes off there. This one, which is a darker colour, those colettes are still small and still reasonably good, so I shall leave those, but we'll be taking lots of this new growth leaf as well. Now, red Russian kale isn't one of my favourites. I do find it a little bit strong, but it's really good at this time of year. Puts on loads of really nice high quality leaf. So I'm picking loads of that. This is one of the great things about growing lots of different kales. Not only lots of different tastes, but they all go to seed at different rates. So this is Pentland Brig. This is quite a cabbagey kale. Lots of people really like that one. And some Dazzling Blue. And some more Pentland Brig. And some Red Russian. What a lovely selection. And then the last brassica I'll be picking today, some of this perennial kale. Again, really lovely. I like the smaller leaves. There's plenty on it, and it just gets more and more prolific as the weeks go by. And then finally, because it's been a big harvest today, I'm just going to pick some of this green garlic, which we just pop into our old tomato tubs in October. And this works really well as an alternative to leeks. A little bit sweeter than a leek, a little bit tastier than a leek, smells absolutely gorgeous, and we've got no leeks, so green garlic it is. We've got stacks of it. So this is everything but the salads, and we always pack into these 2-litre containers, and everything gets sealed up and put in the fridge. And this is all the veg for all of our local family and ourselves, of course. Just quickly run through what we've got here. So we've got garlic, potatoes and beetroot from the store. Carrots from those containers. New potatoes from those containers. More garlic and beetroot and potatoes from the store there. And these are all brassicas, all different sorts. It's that purple sprouting broccoli. It's the green garlic. A bit of cabbage, loads of different types of kale, a bit of beetroot, not beetroot, rhubarb, field bean tops, spinach, parsley, pea shoots, and more spinach. So these are the salads. Depends on the time of year. We do all sorts of different leaves, not just lettuce leaves in the salads, but right now it's predominantly lettuce. Then we'll add, as we get into summer, lots more spinaches and golden purslane and all sorts of different things basically as we go. And so that's the base, and then to that we add, at this time of year, radishes, spring onions, spring onion tops, and sadly we don't have any tomatoes. Our earliest tomatoes are just in flower right now. And grapes. We like to add grapes to our mixes because there's a lot of bitters. You know, we like a lot of these really dark red leaves in the mixes. They can be a little bit bitter, and so a nice sweet grape really offsets that perfectly. So that's the salad bases. So there we go. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, this is what it's all about. Fantastic salads. I like a salad every day, one of these containers every day, and Debbie has one every other day, and the rest go to mainly family and a couple of friends. So I hope you like this quick video. My name's Steve, this is the Seaside Kitchen Garden and Allotment channel, and I'll see you soon.